Food does not care how hard you worked. It doesn't care that you planted tomatoes in the rain. It doesn't care that you picked cucumbers before the sun came up. It doesn't care that you peeled apples until your hands wrinkled or dug potatoes, one basket at a time. Food is only one question. If the answer is yes, it will. Mold does not care how proud you were of your harvest. Bacteria do not care that your grandmother used the same recipe. Mice do not care how carefully you stacked your pantry. Spoilage is patient. It waits for one mistake, one damp shelf, one jar that didn't seal, one cellar that became too warm, one apple hidden beneath the others, one potato beginning to rot, one careless afternoon. That's all it takes. The first year after I married into an Amish family, I thought preserving food meant learning recipes. I was wrong. My father-in-law corrected me before I ruined half the harvest. That sentence stayed with me, because until then I had been asking the wrong question. Those are two very different questions. He walked over to a shelf and picked up an empty mason jar. Then he set it back down. That changed everything. Instead of seeing 10 different preservation methods, I started seeing one enemy, spoilage. And every old Amish method was simply another way of fighting it. One fought moisture, another fought heat, another fought air, another fought bacteria. None of them worked by accident. Every one had a purpose. The first lesson surprised me because it was the least exciting. Cleaning, not canning, not smoking, not salt, cleaning. Before a single cucumber went into a jar, before one cabbage entered a crock, before potatoes were carried into the cellar, everything had to be clean. Shelves, jars, lids, cloths, hands, even the pantry itself. He walked over to an old shelf and pointed toward a tiny ring of dried syrup left behind from the previous season. That little sticky spot suddenly looked much larger. We spent the next hour wiping shelves, checking old jars, throwing away cracked lids, looking at every container one by one, not because we enjoyed cleaning, because we understood what happened when we didn't. My father-in-law had one rule I still follow today. If a jar makes you suspicious, don't argue with it. That sounded harsh, until he explained why. If a lid has failed, if mold is growing where it shouldn't, if something smells rotten, if liquid spurts out unexpectedly, throw it away. Food is valuable, your health is worth more. He never tried to rescue spoiled food. He respected it enough to let it go. That was lesson number 1. Fight spoilage before it enters the pantry. Only then did he bring out the jars. Most people think canning is simply putting food into glass. It isn't. The jar isn't preserving anything, the method is. For high-acid foods like many fruits, jams, jellies, properly acidified tomato products, and pickles made from tested recipes, a boiling water bath canning process removes many spoilage organisms, while the sealed jar keeps new contamination out. The simple idea makes sense. Heat first, seal second, but here's where people get into trouble. A sealed lid does not automatically mean safe food. My father-in-law repeated that sentence every canning season, because one mistake can fool a person. A lid can seal. The food can still be unsafe if the wrong method was used. Low-acid foods are different. Green beans, corn, plain vegetables, meat, many soups. Those need pressure canning using modern test instructions, not because old families were foolish. Because today we understand things they couldn't always see. That was something I admired about him. He respected tradition. He also respected better knowledge. He never said, my grandfather did it this way. He said, what keeps the family safest today? Those are not always the same answer. When we canned together, he never hurried. The jars were washed. The food prepared according to a tested recipe. Every jar filled with the proper headspace. Every rim wiped perfectly clean. Lids placed on gently. Bands tightened only fingertip tight, not with all your strength. Then into the boiling water. Once the processing time finished, I reached for one jar. He stopped me immediately. Leave them. At first I didn't understand. The hardest part of canning wasn't filling the jars. It was leaving them alone afterward. No tipping, no tightening the bands, no pressing the lids. Just patience. The jars rested on towels seals for the next 12 to 24 hours. Only then did we check every seal. Only then were the rings removed. Only then were the jars wiped clean, labeled, and carried into storage. He handed me a marker. I laughed. A marker? He nodded. It may be the cheapest preservation tool in the house. I asked why. He pointed toward a row of jars from the previous year. Without labels, every dark red jar looked almost the same. Tomato sauce, beet pickles, cherry jam. You think you'll remember. By January you won't. Every jar received a date. Every jar received a name. Simple. Practical. Then we carried them into the pantry. I thought we were finished. My father-in-law smiled. Then he opened the cellar door. The cellar smelled different from the pantry. Cooler, darker, almost still. At first I thought the cool air was what preserved the food. My father-in-law shook his head. He picked up a potato from a wooden crate. Perfect. Firm. No sprouts. Then he reached underneath and pulled out another one. Soft. Dark. Beginning to rot. He handed it to me. I looked at the good potatoes. Then the bad one. They were all picked the same day, I said. He nodded. That was another lesson. Food doesn't spoil all at once. It spreads. One bad potato really can spoil the rest. One bruised apple can shorten the life of the whole crate. One forgotten onion can quietly become the problem that ruins everything around it. He removed the bad potato immediately. No debate, no trimming. Out it went. Then he looked at the crates. I did. Nothing touched the walls. Everything sat on wooden slats. Air moved underneath. Around. Between. He explained that root cellars don't stop time. They slow it down. Potatoes like darkness. Carrots and beets like cool temperatures with a little humidity. Pumpkins and squash usually preferred a little drier. Apples are useful, but apples release ethylene gas, which can make nearby produce ripen and age faster. That was his way of reminding me to store different crops thoughtfully instead of piling everything together. The next lesson came from something hanging above us. Strings of drying herbs, apple slices, bundles of onions. I asked him why he bothered drying food when he already had a cellar. He picked up one dried apple slice and bent it gently. It bent without breaking, not sticky, not wet, just leathery. Dry enough, he said. Then he handed me another piece from a batch he had intentionally left unfinished. It looked almost the same. Almost. When he bent it, I could still feel moisture inside. The difference was tiny. The result wasn't sight. He explained that drying isn't about making food hard. It's about removing enough moisture that spoilage slows dramatically. Too little drying and mold wins. Too much drying and some foods become unpleasant. The trick wasn't guessing. It was paying attention. After drying fruit, he never sealed it immediately. Instead, he loosely packed it into clean jars for several days. Each day he shook the jar. If moisture appeared inside the glass, the fruit went back for more drying. He called that conditioning. Another quiet habit, another mistake avoided. Then we walked over to the old cabbage crock. This one fascinated me. No vinegar, no pressure canner, just cabbage, salt, thyme. People think fermentation is food going bad, he said. He shredded the cabbage, mixed it with salt, worked it with his hands until juice appeared, then packed everything tightly into the crock. A weight held the cabbage beneath the brine. Air's the enemy here, he said. That simple explanation made more sense than anything I had read in a book. We weren't trying to stop every microorganism. We were creating conditions where the helpful ones took over first. Another battle, another strategy. The methods looked different. The goal stayed the same. Control the conditions. Then he opened another cupboard and pulled out a coarse sack. Salt, heavy, simple. He scooped a handful into my palm. People think of salt as seasoning. My father-in-law thought of it as one of the oldest preservation tools in the world. Salt pulls moisture from food. Less available moisture means many spoilage organisms struggle to grow. That's why people pack meat and fish in salt long before electricity existed. But he warned me about something important. Using the wrong amount, using the wrong recipe, curing at the wrong temperature. Those mistakes could still ruin food. Tradition deserved respect. So did modern food safety. He believed those two ideas belonged together. As we finished walking through the cellar, I realized something. Every preservation method looked different, but every one was fighting the same enemies. Heat, moisture, air, wrong bacteria, pests. Time. The methods changed. The principles never did. That may have been the biggest lesson of all. Need to remove moisture. Dry it. Need to slow time. Use the cellar. Need acidity. Pickle it properly. Need fermentation. Create the right conditions. Need to protect against air. Seal it correctly. Different problems. Different tools. One afternoon I asked him which method he trusted most. He smiled. All of them. They were never meant to compete. They were meant to work together. That answer explained the whole pantry. Jars on one shelf. Dried herbs hanging overhead. Root vegetables below. Sauerkraut quietly fermenting. Nothing there was trying to do every job. Everything had its place. The older I get, the more I believe that's why old households wasted so little food. They didn't rely on one miracle. They relied on many small habits done carefully. A clean jar, a dry shelf, a cool cellar, enough salt, enough acidity, enough patience, and perhaps the most important habit of all, checking everything regularly. My father-in-law walked through the pantry almost every day, not because he expected trouble, because he knew food changes quietly. One leaking jar, one soft squash, one forgotten basket. Small problems become large ones when nobody is looking. That habit has stayed with me ever since. That one question changes everything. If there's one lesson I hope you carry away from this story, it isn't a recipe. It isn't a ratio. It isn't even a particular preservation method. It's this: food preservation has never been about defeating nature. It's about understanding it. Work with moisture. Work with air. Work with time, and they'll reward you. Fight them carelessly, and they'll always win. My father-in-law never claimed old methods were magical. He simply believed that when you understand why food spoils, the old methods begin making perfect sense. And after all these years, I think he was right.